County Mayo expected a polished first lady, but Pat Nixon reached for the dirt. 1970 brought a shocking rupture to diplomatic protocol. A state visit demands absolute distance from personal history. She knelt, pressing her hands into the exact soil her grandfather once walked. A ceremony vanished instantly. The most guarded woman in America surrendered to the violent pull of her own bloodline. This was not a symbolic photo opportunity. Touching that ground proved that migration stories never truly close. The land waits patiently for generations, demanding that a descendant finally arrive and answer the silence. She answered it. Yet the most devastating survival test of her life occurred long before she stood on foreign soil. The public envisions future presidents' wives lounging in drawing rooms before marriage. Pat Ryan was learning the brutal cost of one more hour of manual labor. She scrubbed bank floors to keep her family breathing. Before her 20th birthday, she worked as a janitor, a bookkeeper, a sales clerk, a secretary, a radiographer, and a movie extra. You assume a girl with that face wanted pocket money. She carried the agonizing weight of medical bills on her teenage shoulders. A janitor discovers quickly that a mess ignores human pride. A movie extra stands inches from absolute glamour without possessing a single drop of it. She did not read about American class lines in a library. She walked into them room by room, wiping surfaces and surviving. Pay changes your self-image at lightning speed. You abandon your dreams and stare down Monday morning. The furnace of her childhood forged a weapon. 13 is an age strictly meant for protection. Pat lost her mother, Catherine Halberstadt Ryan, in 1925. Death denied this young girl a season of protected grief. Necessity stripped away her youth in a single terrifying afternoon. She took over the house. Meals, cleaning, and unyielding schedules fell entirely onto her hands. A 13-year-old child carried the domestic survival of her father and 2 older brothers. We expect a national figure to ascend a golden staircase. Pat began by holding a shattered family together through sheer force of will. Every ordinary chore swallowed her freedom. The kitchen became her classroom, and this crushing weight arrived precisely when most girls are just beginning to understand their own reflection. The woman she buried carried a massive secret. Families prefer clean narratives, presenting Catherine simply as a German immigrant widow from the Ober-Rosbach area near Frankfurt. That story is true, but dangerously incomplete. Catherine had been married before. Her first husband was Matthew Bender Jr. That prior marriage produced 2 older children, Neva Bender, Ryan Renter, and Matthew Bender. Pat did not enter a family starting at page 1. She walked into the middle of a heavily edited story. The Bender branch remained physically close, forcing Pat to grow up alongside older half-siblings from a vanished life. A child inherits the version of the family she is given. Catherine folded away the awkward truths of her first marriage. Pat's maternal history was partially veiled behind silence. Omission shapes a daughter just as violently as spoken memory. She learned early that reality must sometimes be hidden to keep a household functioning. Then the mine came for her father. William Ryan did not die suddenly. He drowned slowly from the inside out. Decades of pulling wealth from the earth left his lungs filled with silica dust. Silicosis is a quiet, ruthless killer. Pat watched labor literally destroy the man performing it. The danger was not an accident outside the job. The danger was the job itself. A teenage girl transformed into a nurse, tending to a dying man for agonizing months. Illness erased his earning power and forced caregiving into her daily schedule. You can grow up believing hard work guarantees safety. Watching a breadwinner disappear into a coughing, suffocating decline destroys that naive belief overnight. Love cannot stop a body from failing when the industrial system has been grinding it down for years. The math of illness is absolutely merciless. One person weakens, and the entire financial structure of the home collapses. Security proves itself to be a temporary, fragile illusion. Respectability will not save you. Loyalty will not save you. She understood this terrifying equation before her peers even knew the math existed. William Ryan suffocated to death in 1930. Pat was exactly 18 years old. 2 catastrophic deaths before adulthood can harden a life permanently. She was left effectively entirely on her own. The world did not pause to offer sympathy. Bills do not care about a teenager's devastating grief. A girl from a protected home thinks about what career suits her passions. A girl hit by catastrophic illness thinks only about what keeps people standing. Endurance became her only remaining capital. She pushed forward, financing her own education under immense crushing pressure. She worked her way through the University of Southern California. Grief, hard labor, and the school ran on brutal parallel tracks. She held all 3 simultaneously without collapsing. Many people attempt one path and can barely breathe. She operated inside a furnace of absolute necessity. The sequence of jobs she held before her 20th birthday is not merely a list. It is a terrifying descent into the physical machinery of America. Janitor, bookkeeper, sales clerk, secretary, radiographer, bank floor sweeper, movie extra. The sequence feels almost profoundly unfair. It is too broad, too physically demanding in one place, too clerical in another, too unstable to fit the tidy story of a future leader. Tidy stories hide the real engine of a human being. You do not drift through that many distinct jobs at that age unless life is pushing you violently. Life was pushing her to the absolute edge. The key detail is how frighteningly early the pattern locked into her bones. This happened before she settled, before she found a husband, before any network existed to lift her. She took whatever grueling paid work could move her survival 1 week forward. She entered adulthood through a string of paid roles so wildly varied they almost sound invented. Richard Nixon chased political brilliance, yet something far harder trapped his attention. He spent 2 years courting a woman who possessed zero traditional political advantage. Pat arrived with raw endurance. Nixon recognized a psychological structure built long before he ever knocked on her door. He called her a wild Irish gypsy. The nickname sounds like a careless romantic invention. It hid a razor-sharp truth about her soul. He meant she was free. Free in a way a highly controlled, calculated politician could never fake. She possessed self-possession forged in unimaginable tragedy. She could handle intense strain without shattering. A man terrified of losing control found a woman who survived an uncontrollable reality, and the attraction became absolute. Nixon needed a counterweight. He found a person who refused to panic when systems failed. Attraction fades rapidly. Recognition locks in forever. He knew she would never break under the pressure of Washington because life had already thrown its absolute worst at her and she had held. Ambition usually drives political men toward obvious social assets. They seek elite standing and flawless public appeal. He bypassed all of that decorative nonsense. He anchored himself to a survivor. Think about the people in your own life right now. You can spot the survivor instantly. The one person who does not panic when the system fails. The one person who carries themselves like they have already seen enough horror to never be shaken again. Nixon recognized this earned stability. Earned is the critical word. Nothing about her background handed her that power. It was built on relentless adaptation. Adaptation means you learn to adjust at terrifying speed. You work without waiting for permission. You keep going when there is zero guarantee it will pay off. Those habits look ordinary on the surface. They create an absolute anomaly, a person who cannot be unsettled by anything. He stayed for 2 years because he knew what he had found. He found a woman who could stand beside him without a single ounce of pretense. She possessed strength without hardness, control without rigidity. The balance was perfect. People constantly misread quiet, enduring women. They look at a first lady and see applied artificial polish. They assume public reserve is a performance crafted by highly paid handlers. Pat Nixon's absolute stillness was a weapon. Her composure arrived long before the political stage demanded it. If you are forced to be entirely self-reliant early in life, your silence becomes your strongest shield. Visibility pushes restraint to its breaking point. The White House magnifies every single flaw under a microscope. A fiercely guarded woman must hold her internal system together while millions of eyes search for a crack. Society demands easy, digestible labels for women. Warm or cold, open or distant. She defied their lazy sorting. Observers mistakenly read her fierce protection as cold distance. They interpreted her iron discipline as aloofness. They completely misunderstood her ultimate survival mechanism as a lack of basic human emotion. How many women do you know who carry this exact same invisible weight? The ones who refuse to complain when everything burns. The ones who keep the entire operation running while the world entirely ignores their effort. You look at them and see a personality trait. You are actually looking at a survival tactic. Survival leaves permanent, unchangeable patterns in a human being. It dictates exactly when to speak, when to absorb, and when to reveal absolutely nothing. This is the terrifying cost of early, forced capability. It requires relentless energy and exhausting hyper-awareness. The shield protects the person flawlessly, but it also isolates them completely. We are trained by society to admire loud, visible ambition. We miss the staggering, silent power of raw endurance. The public believed the White House created her iron restraint. The stage only exposed the armor she welded together in a house filled with death. 50 years after scrubbing floors, she stood inside the most polished rooms on the planet. She viewed every velvet curtain through the hyper-vigilant eyes of the teenage girl who once held the broom. The distance between those two worlds is almost incomprehensible. No clean bridge connects them. The gap is filled with sweat, grief, and relentless forward motion. She did not erase her first life to seamlessly enter the second. She carried the first life directly into the second, hiding it in plain sight. She possessed a profound vocabulary of effort that the political elite could never truly comprehend. The dignity of high office means nothing to a woman who has wiped counters and counted pennies to buy medicine. Look again at that moment in Ireland. The First Lady of the United States drops to the ground. A living descendant collides with a place that formed her bloodline before she was even born. She touches the earth. It answers a deep human wish that a family story does not break entirely when crossing a brutal ocean. Something vital remained. Something ancient could still answer. She acknowledged the massive gap, the lost generations, and the fierce survival of her own line. This was not a politician seeking approval. This was a granddaughter claiming her dead. Every promise the world makes about effort and reward fails the test of real trauma. Hard work alone will not save you. She learned this watching her father suffocate. She learned this taking over a household at 13. She learned this scrubbing a bank floor while trying to stay in school. Her entire public image was a masterpiece of misdirection. She offered them composure. They forgot the family medical bills. They forgot the desperation repeated until it looked perfectly graceful. If the traits that define a person are forged long before anyone important notices them, the public never truly knows who is leading them. The image people held of her was a beautiful lie shaped by deeper, violent forces. When strength refuses to announce itself, we fail to see it holding everything together. You look at the composed woman standing next to you today and assume she was born that way. What tragedy did she have to survive to build the silence you are admiring,